It's time for the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. The podcast you look forward to for all of your news and reviews of the best comic books hitting stands. Whether it's DC,
Batman, Wonder Woman,
Marvel,
Spider-Man,
Image,
Spawn, Saga,
Boom,
Once and Future, Power Rangers,
or whatever book or publisher you follow,
we cover them all here.
this is the place for you.
That's right, it's for everyone.
This is the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast.
Let's get it.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Comic Bin Comic Book Podcast. I am your host, Theo, and got a quick show for you this time around. We're going to be looking at 5 titles that came out in the past week. First up on the list, we're going to look at Destro #1, the latest addition to the Energen universe, written by Dan Waters with art by Andre Bresson. Then we're going to go over to Misery #1, written by Todd McFarlane with art by Simon Kudranski. Also a new addition to the Spawn universe. Then we're going to look at Wonder Woman #10 from Writer Tom King with art by Daniel Sampierre. And then we're going to look at Sensational She-Hulk #9, written by Rainbow Ryle with art by Andres Genlet. And then finally, we're going to look at my book of the week, Ultimate Spider-Man #6, written by Jonathan Hickman with art by Marco Ciccito. But before getting into the reviews, let's take a little bit look at the news. And most of the news these days are coming from social media. We're probably not going to get any big stuff until close to San Diego Comic-Con, if not at San Diego Comic-Con itself. But it hasn't precluded the creators to make announcements for themselves about the future of some titles. So that has been happening. Now, if you remember last episode, I reviewed Batman and Robin #10 and was just talking about how much in love I was with the title and the work that Joshua Williamson has been doing on it. Well, right after that, and after the episode was posted, Joshua posted on his Substack that he would be leaving the title after issue 13 and that it'll be going over to a new creative team. So, of course, I'm not too happy about that. You know, Joshua Williamson he's really breathed new life into Damian, and he's done that ever since he jumped on the Robin run a few years ago, and it continued into Batman and Robin. So I'm really gonna miss that once he's finished with that title. And he also mentioned he's gonna be leaving Green Arrow as well. I can't remember if he said that one was being canceled or if it had a new creative team also. I would assume that it's going to have a new creative team, considering Green Arrow's role in Absolute Power. But definitely wasn't happy about that news. And then Tini Howard also posted that she would be leaving both Catwoman and Harley Quinn pretty soon. And I want to say that it's going to happen in August as well. And I am sure that there are about as many folks who are happy about that news as those who might be down about it. I personally am happy to see her leaving Catwoman. I have not been a fan of the voice and just the direction she took the character. So was a big fan when Ron B was on it. I had a lot of pessimism when she was announced being the writer for Catwoman, based on my experience in reading a lot of the stuff that she did over at Marvel, particularly with Excalibur and just her inability to grasp the history and continuity of some of those characters there, particularly with Rogue and Gambit. And as I feared, a lot of stuff happened in Catwoman I just did not like, and the style of writing just did not sit with me, and apparently it didn't sit with a lot of folks. That if you listen to the TVU comic podcast, most of the folks over there have been down on that series. Jamie, who was the last person who has been reviewing the title, has now kind of come to the dark side, if you want to say it that way, as well. And she's not a fan of the title anymore either. But of course, those aren't being canceled. They'll get new creative teams over there at DC, so we will see who those individuals are, and hopefully it'll be enough for me to have an interest in Catwoman again. Never had an interest in Harley Quinn. Never been a character that I've wanted to follow unless it was intertwined in something that I was already reading. So that will likely continue, but I am hoping that we get a creative team that will breathe some new life into Catwoman. And then the last bit of news that came out via social media from the comic creator herself, Rainbow Rowell posted on Twitter X that she was leaving Sensational She-Hulk after issue 10, and that not only would she be leaving, but that they were canceling the series after issue 10 as well. That just floored me. I have absolutely loved what she has done on that series, going all the way back to her first volume under the She-Hulk imprint, the plain She-Hulk imprint. And believe me, it took a few issues for me to warm up to her. If you can remember some of the reviews that I wrote and some of my comments here on the podcast, early in the run, I was kind of wondering where she was taking the character. But once I got grasp of what she was doing, I fell in love with it. And there is a reason why that title was nominated for an Eisner. And I'm just floored with disappointment that this series is going to be ending in just one more issue. And I'm pretty certain that despite this being the end, that this is probably not how she wanted it to end, especially based on her comments. And I don't know what's going to be next for Jennifer Walters. We know that she's going to be in the Avengers Assemble title, but just knowing all of the characters that's going to be in that series, you just have to wonder, if you're a fan of hers, how much of a spotlight will be able to be shined on her. And I would imagine, considering what happens in issue 10 of Sensational She-Hulk, what's going to happen with the relationship between Jennifer and Jack of Hearts. So of all the news that came out, that was the one that really floored me as a huge fan of She-Hulk, knowing that in just one more issue, she won't have her solo title anymore. But that being said, I'll talk a little bit more about Sensational She-Hulk when I get to the review. I also wrote a review up on the website. You can take a look at that now as well. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get into our reviews. Okay, first up, we kick things off with Skybound Image and Destro #1, written by Dan Waters with art by Andre Bresson, the latest addition to the Energon universe, the partnership between Skybound and Hasbro. So this was a pretty quick read, and it's probably because I had to read it a few times, and I also saw some preview pages when the series was first announced. And I don't know what to say about Destro, particularly because, again, the Energen universe is just its own beast. So a lot of Destro's mannerisms and psyche is there, but just the overall story, just maybe because it's not truly G.I. Joe yet, and how a lot of this stuff is going on, because we see Destro in this foreign country basically leading a coup to oust the prime minister and take it over for himself. But he's using this country mainly as a front to deal with his weapons. Now, of course, if you're following everything that happened in Duke and Cobra Commander, you know that he and Cobra Commander are now in a partnership that will eventually lead to the formation of Cobra. But you see pretty quickly that the overall controlling psyches of each character, each one feels that they are over the other, is already festering out. You see that they kind of get into an argument over the fact that instead of testing out the bats and trying to perfect them with regards to implementing and equipping them with Energen to make them truly the battle bots that they want them to be, that Destro is using them to deal with his own personal desires with taking over this country. And you see they quickly get into it, he and Cobra Commander. So you do know that at some point they're going to come to blows, and you can see it further in the issue where he goes to his family markings and speak to his ancestors and pretty much get an idea of how he's going to handle his Cobra Commander problem. So I don't know how I truly feel about this series just yet, being only one issue in, which is weird considering I was already sold on Scarlet after one issue, and maybe because I am more of a fan of that character and her relationship with Snake Eyes and the rest of the Joes. I don't know, but we will see how things go with Destro. Now, the one thing that was absolutely great were the art and the colors. The art was done by Andre Bresson. Of course, the colors were done by Adriano Lucas, which is really superb. And so they're a good team to have together on this project over at Skybound Image. But we will see how things play out. I am committed to following this series as well to the end, simply because whether I like it or not, I want to see how everything fits in the Energen universe once everything comes together, particularly on the G.I. Joe side with how they are putting these pieces together. It's really quite different than what you're seeing with everything else in the Energen universe. You know, on the Void Rivals side, it's strictly Void Rivals. On the Transformers side, it's strictly Transformers. However, with G.I. Joe, we see where you don't have just this story of G.I. Joe. You have them building up that particular piece of the universe by looking at some of the key characters. And I would love to pick the brains of the folks over at Skybound, particularly Robert Kirkman, to see just the thought behind why they're going that route with G.I. Joe compared to the other titles. And one may think because G.I. Joe have all of these really important characters, you know, Duke, General Hawk, Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, Destro, Scarlet. You can say the same thing when you look at Transformers with Optimus and Bumblebee and Megatron and Starscream and Soundwave and Shockwave. So you can kind of do the same, but I would love to pick those guys' brains just to see how they come about building this universe, particularly from the standpoint of G.I. Joe. But I am going to be following it through to the end no matter what, and strongly recommend that you do the same if you're not reading the Image and stuff. I really recommend that you do so. But again, that is Destro #1 from writer Dan Waters with art by Andre Bresson over at Skybound Image. All right, staying at Image, we now look at the newest addition to the Spawn universe, and this is Misery #1. Misery #1, written by Todd McFarlane with art by Simone Kudransky. Let's see if I say this right. Simone Kudransky over at Image. Now, Misery focuses on Cyan Fitzgerald, who is the daughter of Terry Fitzgerald and Wanda Blake. And you remember Wanda's also Al Simmons' ex-wife. But one thing that I have learned recently, after reading Rat City and now Misery, is that I really do need to catch up on a lot that's been going on with Spawn. I started the series when it first came out years ago when Image first started, followed it for about the first 100 issues, and then dropped off, picked up a few issues here and there. But I can tell that there is really a lot going on in the Spawn universe without Spawn actually being present. So if there is a Cliff Notes or a Spawn for Dummies that you guys out there can throw my way, please do so. But with Misery #1, we see that Cyan has grown frustrated with the fact that her dad seems to have let the death of his wife go by the wayside. She feels that her mom was murdered. He believes that it was just an accident. And so she sets out on her own to try to figure things out and basically try to find justice for Wanda, who was, as she say, was murdered. But there is a lot going on, and the story begins with a focus on this FBI agent who unfortunately is also a victim of domestic violence. And Cyan picks up on that. But as someone who hasn't been following the universe, there's a lot that I need to catch up on, particularly with understanding all of Cyan's ability, not just with her ability to go invisible, but those other powers that she seemed to have as well, and to see how this will all play out. I don't know if Misery is a miniseries or if it's planned on being a ongoing with Image, but we shall see. I was definitely interested just seeing the cover itself from Donna Guillo and then reading the story itself. I felt it was something I definitely will need to follow, but I also will need to catch up on some of the Spawn universe just to make sure that I understand what's going on, who's who, so that I don't feel completely lost with following the events of the story. But again, good first issue for someone who hasn't been following the universe as much as he should have. But I will definitely be doing so with this one as well as with Rat City. But again, this here is Misery #1 from Todd McFarlane and Zygmunt Krudansky over at Image Comics.
Hey, you got a second? The Comic Book Spot is looking for comic book fans with something to say. If you're interested in writing reviews of your favorite comic books, or you want to contribute original content with articles like The Top 10 Forgotten Spider-Man Villains, or Why One More Day Was the Worst Thing to Ever Happen in Comics, or maybe Why Indie Comics Saved the Comic Book Industry, then we want to invite you to join our family as a writer. Just reach out and email us at writers@thecomicbookspot.com and let us know that you want to become one of our writers. It's that easy, and honestly, there's no reason not to. You get exclusive access to our staff Discord server, you get early access to comics, and you meet a lot of cool people. What are you waiting for? Just email us at writers@thecomicbookspot.com and let us know that you want to become one of our writers.
Next up, we move on over to DC Comics and Wonder Woman #10. Wonder Woman #10, written by Tom King with art by Daniel Sampere. This finishes up the story arc with Sovereign that's been going on the last few issues. And we see Diana wakes herself up and she finds herself on this small island. And she is on this small island alone with Cheetah, her old friend Barbara Minerva. And this is a wonderful story. And I will give credit where credit is due. You all know that I have been really down on Tom King as of late. And as of late means going all the way back to Batman 50. But this story here was really, really put together well. And it really focuses, you see a lot with regards to Diana's and Barbara's relationship. Just wonderfully plotted out and relayed on the comic page when you see how vicious Barbara goes after Diana. And as these events are happening, Sovereign is basically writing the story. He's telling the story and how he purposely had Diana placed on this island, that Cheetah was here prior to, and Cheetah was there with no food. She was starving, so she was really, really, really in this survival mode. And so he put Diana there with the expectation that they would really go at it to the death. And he expected Diana to win, but he also expected to finally break her. But she didn't. And by not doing so, by kind of giving in and letting Cheetah win this battle, it basically ruined what Sovereign was looking to do. Now, the flip side of this is while all of this is going on, the Wonder Girls, I'm going to call them, Donna Troy, Yara Flor, and Cassie Sandsmark are at the airport trying to prepare themselves to find Diana. And Donna, lays out a big ta-da with introducing the invisible jet, and the look on Yara's face as well as Cassie is just perfect with regards to how they're looking at like, what the hell are we looking at? And as they, try to find their way to the plane, you see Cassie basically walk into it, and it's just hilarious when it happens. But the interaction between those three, you could see that they were the comic relief of this issue, but it plays so well into the overall story of these three young ladies as they also grow in their roles as who they are within the Amazonian world. And I just love the interaction between those two. Donna's more traditional Amazonian, but Yara and Cassie are these youngsters who are hip to what's going on in society, and those two are just cussing up a storm. And it was a really good, fun interaction between those three, with Donna pressing the wrong button and getting ejected from the invisible jet, and Cassie's like, yeah, I don't want to press any buttons. So that was just, really, really fun to read. The other thing that really had me, laughing was once they make their way to the island and they find Diana and they find Barbara, you see where Yara and Cheetah meet each other for the very first time, and all you get is a hiss from Cheetah, and the response from Yara in how she looks back at Cheetah, with just like, yeah, whatever. It's just great. So I am all on board with Tom King's run with Wonder Woman. I felt the need to write a review for this issue. It is up on the site if you want to take a look. But this was a really good, fun issue. Loved the art from Daniel St. Pierre. Loved every issue of the art that he's drawn, as well as the covers. So all of that, it's just fun. But again, this was also a touching story to end it all with this story arc when looking at the relationship between Barbara and Diana. I mean, you saw Diana really break down and expose herself to Cheetah. And, there was a panel where she just falls into her and she's in tears. And so you would never expect that between them two. But apparently that relationship between those two young ladies are definitely that strong to where Diana feels comfortable with doing so at the end of their battle while they're sitting by the fireside. But you cannot talk Tom King's Wonder Woman without talking Trinity and the backup story that has been gracing the pages of this title as well since he's come on to it. So the backup story was World's Finest. This is part 7 of that series that had the art from Belen Ortega, which is also beautiful art. Now, it's not on the same level as Daniel St. Pierre, but I will read anything with Belen Ortega's art as well. She just has a beautiful pen that she uses when she draws her images. But this story again continues not just the back and forth time jump looking at the life of Diana's daughter Trinity, Lizzie, but what has made me pick this up, and we cover this on the Batman Universe comic podcast, is the interactions between Lizzie brothers, the Super Sons, Damian and John. And I have been turned off by John Kent ever since he's been aged up. But Tom King has made me a fan of the character, particularly with regards to the constant bickering between him and Damien. You look at how those two go back and forth, and it really gives you vibes going back to Peter Tomasi and Super Sons when John was 10 and Damien was 13. But now, even as they are both older, you see that those two fellas, they'll have that same kick with one another to where they can just go at each other's throat no matter what. And through every backup issue where these two have been in, with basically being charged with the care of Lizzie, you just see that those two are the best of friends that can really just hate each other's guts if they weren't best of friends. But Tom King has made me okay with aged up John. I'm still not a fan of that event happening. I will never say and will never admit to enjoying aged up John, but I do enjoy aged up John in this world with Trinity as we watch them to mature as young men as they take care of young Lizzie. And it's just fun. So this time, Lizzie's trying to fly a kite. She's just failing at all costs. There's nothing John can do to help. He basically destroys the kite trying to do the right thing. Damien tries to use physics and his wit to make the kite fly, and it just, nothing they do helps. Trinity is just bawling in tears because it's impossible to get this kite to fly. But eventually John gives in to Damien's plan, and the three of them go to Arkham Tower, and they break out the one man who could possibly help Lizzie in getting the kite to go airborne. And that is our friend Kite Man. Hell yeah. And just the whole notion of how this whole story was put together was just absolutely wonderful. Again, Tom King, what he's done on Wonder Woman and with this backup story, for me has been nothing short of perfection with the voice he's given Diana and the story he's making with Lizzie and Damien and John. Like I said, he has slowly made me a fan of this version of John Kent. So we will see how things play out in the next issue and what the adventures of the Super Sons and Trinity will be and the period of time that they will be in. I still wonder why he goes back and forth in time to tell his story. We've gone as far as Lizzie being 17, 18. We've even seen an issue where she's old enough to face Diana to, truly become an adult, and we've seen him go right back in time to where she's a youngster again. So it's back and forth, and I don't know the rationale or if there is a rationale for it, but it's been a wonderful story. I truly enjoyed it. If you're not reading Wonder Woman, strongly suggest that you do. It's a really good run. But again, that is Wonder Woman number 10, written by Tom King, with art in the main story by Daniel St. Pierre. The art in the backup story is by Belen Ortega over at DC Comics. Now we move on over to Marvel Comics for our last two books. How about that? Marvel's closing out with our best books of the week again. But this one, The Sensational She-Hulk, number 9, the penultimate issue, and it sucks that I am saying that. I really hate that that is the case. But it is written by Rainbow Rowell with art by Andres Genolet, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due with the colors by D. Cuniff, which are absolutely impeccable. I can't not give this man enough credit for the work he does with the colors on this series. But again, this is the penultimate issue. Jen and Jack have made their way back to Earth after spending time at Club Soul. You see almost immediately that there are problems around where there's this couple that the property manager is showing the penthouse level to, and they are not pleased to see Jennifer, considering the events that have happened in this series going all the way back to when April made her way back and fought Jen and Bruce and destroyed a couple of buildings and things of that nature. So you see that things are already amiss, and it's now they're inside, and Jen finds that Caucus and Ransack the Reject has basically just destroyed her place. And they weren't expecting them back as soon as they did, but that leads to the funniest part of this story when you look at the interaction between Jack and Ransack, and just how those two are just ready to go at each other's throats before Jen interferes and kind of bring things back down by basically forcing Ransack to do as Jack asked. But Jen takes off. She feels she's not ready to deal with life yet, and Jack let her go on her own because he doesn't trust Caucus and Ransack to put things back in order at the penthouse. So he's gonna keep an eye on them. But as you watch this, as you continue on, you see the consequence of Jen being in that hallway at the time that couple was walking by, and the property manager tells her that they won't be getting the place that they looked at, and she insinuates that it's because she is there, because She-Hulk is there. And the look on Jen's face kind of gives you an idea of how she feels. So she does what she does best in that situation. She gives a call to our friend Tatiana, and it's Punch Club time. And, they hit the construction site and just wail on each other as they typically do. And eventually Volcana, she joins in. But as they are just wailing on each other, Carol Danvers shows up looking for Jen. And we now get to a follow-up from a previous issue where Carol, as they are going to hang out, she and Jen and Patsy, she made an offer to Jen to join the Avengers. And now we get a follow-up with that where she is serious in that offer, and serious enough to where she is going to take Jen on the grand tour, which in the end really didn't feel like a pitch, because when you see how things are set up on the Impossible City, it's as if Jen's already there. She has her quarters, there's clothes waiting on her. They invite her to a meeting, they're talking about missions. So it doesn't play like, Carol's making a pitch to her to join the team. It already seems like she's a member of the team. But the way the story ends, however, you see that what has happened by this final pitch that Carol has done, that it's really put Jen in a truly vulnerable place, because as much as she would love to be a part of the Avengers, she still have doubts based on history, and that history is very real. She's never felt like a true member, and no matter what, she there's part of her that not sure if that's still going to be the case. But the biggest thing that is weighing on her once she makes it back home is the effect that this is going to happen, is the effect that this is going to have on her relationship with Jack. Because remember, no one else knows that Jack is alive. That is still a secret. He died way back when, and he came back. But the only person that knows is Patsy and Jen. And so she is truly weighing the options, and it's truly weighing on her. And you see how she is really worried, not about the Avengers, which is, again, there's doubt about that, but she is so concerned about what's going to happen between her and Jack. And it's really, really touching, and I really, really enjoyed it from the standpoint that Rainbow Rowell really brings Jennifer down low to where she is really fearful for what's going to happen next, despite the fact that Jack is here saying he's going to be here, he's not going anywhere, he loves her, as she falls asleep. And I am looking at it from two standpoints as we get into issue 10. One being that something's going to happen and Jack's not going to make it, which I think is just terrible. Or two, despite the fact that Jack said he's not going anywhere, Jack is going somewhere. And I'm only saying that because right now, with regards to Avengers Assemble, there's no word about Jack. And there wouldn't be, because again, no one knows he's alive anyway. But the other concern with regards to that is Jennifer's going to be on a team with other prominent members. Carol Danvers is going to be there. Captain America's going to be there. How much time will Avengers Assemble have to flesh out Jennifer's future, and Jennifer's future, if any, with Jack of Hearts? And I don't know how or what Rainbow Rowell has planned for issue 10, but considering what we may see in Avengers Assemble, I am apprehensive with how things may turn out. The solicits say one thing, but it could mean so much. And again, I am not taking it well that this series is being canceled. I really am not. The only thing that might make me feel worse would be Batman being canceled, which of course will never happen. I was already down at the news from Joshua Williamson that he was leaving Batman and Robin, which is going to continue on with a new creative team. Just please don't be Tini Howard. But She-Hulk, Sensational She-Hulk is going away. There is not going to be a continuation. And I don't know how Rainbow Rowell will close it out, but it's just tough seeing where things are going to go with Jennifer and her future, considering where they're going to be placing her with this upcoming She-Hulk title. So I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic, but I'm not feeling great about it. And I just hate that feeling right now for this series that I have loved so much. And again, all credit due to Rainbow Rowell for making me a believer. When her run first started on She-Hulk, I wasn't sold just yet. I was wondering where things were going with direction with Jennifer, and Rainbow Rowell has made me a believer, and I'm going to miss her. I've already read the backup story that she did, or that she's doing on Superman, with Gail Simone on the main story, which was also pretty decent. But God, I am going to miss Rainbow Rowell and Andres Genolet and their work on Sensational She-Hulk. And again, I have to give some credit to D. Cuniff as well with the colors that he's done on this series. This has been a wonderful creative team. I do wish them all the best, and I hate to see that they are splitting them up as they are canceling this title, and it's going to suck reading issue 10 and reviewing it. But again, this was my second favorite book of the week, Sensational She-Hulk number 9 from Rainbow Rowell and Andres Genolet over at Marvel Comics. That takes us to my book of the week, Ultimate Spider-Man number 6, written by Jonathan Hickman with art by the returning Marco Checchetto, again over at Marvel Comics. And this one was also a very quick read, and I got through it very quickly. Before I knew it, I was on the last page. But it doesn't mean that it didn't move the story forward, because it absolutely did. So, in simplest terms, Peter's telling the story. He reveals to the rest of his family that he is Spider-Man. Of course, May has always known. She found Peter one day in costume, but he reveals now to Richard and to Mary Jane who he is, and he tells them the story of why he is looking like he got beaten with a baseball bat. And so that story focuses on him and Harry going, and they are scoping out Kingpin's place, and they are going to break in and beat information out of him just to try to find out about the people that are really running the world. And what happens is Kingpin knew they were there. He's always known he was there, and he reveals how he's known they've been watching him. But the three of them get into this battle, and Winston just basically beats the hell out of them. Fisk is just this behemoth when he takes off his suit and the shirt, and you see him with these look like tattoos all over him. But he just beats the crap out of Peter, and he beats the crap out of Harry to the point to where they say, "Yeah, we gotta go. We're out of our depth in this." So that's the story, and that's what he reveals to May and Richard and to Mary Jane when they see him with this huge black eye. But after the kids are in bed, he and Mary Jane are talking a little bit more about what's going on. He reveals he still doesn't have a code name. So as he takes his wife on a midnight swing over the city, MJ, the public relations person in this ultimate universe, she gives Peter his code name of Spider-Man. So that ends the issue. Again, really quick read. I mean, you there's so much action. You get to these pages and there's no dialogue. There's just basically Kingpin is just beating the hell out of Harry and Peter. And then you get to the point, Peter's finishing the story to the family. They're sending the kids to bed. And the next thing you know, him and Mary Jane are hanging out, swinging across town. But great story. Again, move things along despite the quick nature of it. It's good to see Marco Cicchetto back on art duties. He took the last issue off. But again, I have of the Ultimate titles, this is the one that I am enjoying the most. Although the Ultimates has the chance of what we're taking at, simply because at some point we are looking at getting a version of She-Hulk in the Ultimate Universe as well. But again, this is my book of the week, Ultimate Spider-Man #6 from Jonathan Hickman and Marco Cicchetto over at Marvel Comics. Now, before closing things out, I do want to give some honorable mentions for some titles that I'm not reviewing in full on this episode, but still that I read and just want to give shout outs for. Now, the first one is Under York #2 over at Image Comics from Sylvain Runberg and Mirka Andolfo. I had mentioned last episode that I was actually going to review this, but unfortunately, I enjoyed Misery so much I decided to replace it. But Under York is, if there is one thing that I have a concern with, is how slow the story seems to be moving. I don't know, and I need to check to see how many issues they are planning for this series. I don't know. I doubt it's an ongoing, so I would assume that maybe 12. And if it's 12, then I can kind of understand the pace. But if it's less than that, I have some real concerns that at some point things may get rushed. The art from Mirka Andolfo is beautiful, but I am wondering about the story. But again, I just need to see how many issues are planned thus far, and if there are enough to quell my apprehensions, then I'll be okay. But if this is going to be 6 or 8 issues, at some point they're going to be rushing to get the story told. But again, that's Under York #2 from Sylvain Runberg and Mirka Andolfo over at Image Comics. And then the last honorable mention I wanted to give a shout out to Gun Honey Collision Course #2 from Charles Ardai and Hong Ching over at Titan Comics. I can't see myself ever giving a full review on this podcast, considering that it is a more family-friendly one. And this story here is just very graphic in nature. It's a mature book, not made for the kiddies. There's a lot of sexual innuendos in here, as well as violence, again, considering the title is called Gun Honey. But it is still a good story, and there's a reason why this story has gotten 3 volumes thus far, with Collision Course being the 3rd. But it's a really good story, fellas. If you're not reading it, pick it up. But again, my second honorable mention, Gun Honey #2 from Charles Ardai and Hong Ching over at Titan Comics. So that's going to do it for this week. In this week's episode of the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. For next week, we have a bit of titles that I'm looking at covering. First up is part 5 of the House of Brainiac event with Action Comics number 1066 from Joshua Williamson with Rafa Sandoval on art. Then part 6 of the same event, House of Brainiac with Superman number 15 from the same creative team, Joshua Williamson and Rafa Sandoval. Then over at Marvel, we got Ultimate Black Panther number 5 from Brian Hill with art by Carlos Nieto. Then we got Boy Rivals number 10 from Robert Kirkman and art from Lorenzo De Felici. Blood Hunt number 4, the fourth part of that event over at Marvel Comics from Jed McKay and Pepe Larraz. Then we have a new series. Mariko Tamaki has made her way back to DC Comics with Satana, Bring Down the House. Again, that's by Mariko Tamaki with art by Javier Rodriguez. And then I am all caught up on Grimm, and so I'm going to look at, hopefully, Grimm number 18 from writer Stephanie Phillips with art from Flaviano. Then Rat City number 3, the Spawn universe, written by Erica Schultz with art by Zay Carlos. Then we have issue number 2 of Grommets from Rick Remender, Brian Posen, and art by Moreno Dinicio over at Image Comics. Star Trek Defiant number 16 from Christopher Cantwell and Angel Unzueto. This continues that story arc with the parasite and the hive mind that's been trying to take over the Starbase 99. And then, okay, I'm going to be telling my age again, but we are going to be looking at Gatchaman number 1, which is based on the old cartoon series, but this is written by Cullen Bunn with art by Chris Batista over at Mad Cave. Then we get to the penultimate issue of You and I from J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Choi over at AWA. So we have a lot of stuff that's lined up for next week. I hope I'm able to cover them all because these are all some really good titles. I've been enjoying those that are already out, and then I'm excited about some of the new stuff, particularly the Gatchaman series. Again, telling my age from the old cartoon that was back in the day. So we will see what happens next week with a new list of titles coming out, and another great week of comics for you to hit your comic book shop and support those guys and pick up and read. That is going to do it for this episode of the Comic Ben Comic Book Podcast. I'd like to thank you all for your continued support of the program. The Comic Ben Podcast, as well as the Comic Book Spot, are a part of the Comic Book Source family of sites and media. You can follow the podcast on Twitter X at comic_Ben, or my personal account at BatmanFan_4life. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, and Threads. We're all over social media. You can also follow our sister site over at thebatmanuniverse.net for all of your news and reviews in the world of Batman. Tune in next time as we give you more in the world of comic books. Again, we truly appreciate your support. But until we meet again next time, keep reading those comics.